Hello, everybody, and welcome to What Am Games. It's a podcast about hobbying and what we enjoy about hobbying. Okay, that's good enough for now. On this podcast, we will be talking about our hobby histories, telling stories of former games and games that we're currently playing. We'll also be going over fails and wins every week of that week. We'll be talking about favorite hobby videos and creators. We'll be talking about our favorite board games and RPGs. We'll be talking about a whole bunch of tabletop goodness. And that brings us to our personal introductions, where we're going to be giving a little insight into who we are. Kurt, you want to introduce Jane for us?
Yes, indeed. So, who is Mr. Jane?
All right, yeah. Well, my name is Jane, and I am an actor and a musician. I live in New York. That's more or less it. Yeah, the city.
And so then, how did you get into hobbying, gaming? What's your passion? Where does it lie?
Well, I mean, I would consider myself right now a painter first. I would love to actually be playing the Warhammer 40K, but the global pandemic kind of put a damper on that. But I first got into the hobby when I was maybe 11 or 12, and for Christmas that year, I was given a box of the Games Workshop Fellowship of the Ring miniatures. And it was the Fellowship of the Ring box, so it had Sam and Frodo and that whole crew. And at the time, I was that wasn't even something that was on my radar. It was just little Jane is an artsy sort. He'll probably enjoy painting these guys, and I did. And then when I found out that there was a game attached to it, I was just like totally done. And I would spend just like hours, drawing up army lists and battle plans and stuff, and most of that never really came to fruition, although Mike and I did play some of it. And he also got me into Warhammer, because he was already into Warhammer, so I had basically the third edition Necrons start collecting, but that was really all of my 40K experience at that point. And then, as happens, as I got a little older and, more involved in various things that were not hobby related, that kind of fell by the wayside. And about a year ago, as the pandemic was just getting underway, I got back into it because, spent a lot of time at home alone, and I remembered how much joy painting those little guys used to bring me. So I re-entered the hobby by getting the Age of Sigmar tiny, the smallest set, which I believe is a Storm Strike. And I painted my little Night Haunts and my little Stormcast, and that was about the time as well that they announced the Indomitus box, and I just really fell in love with some of those Marines. And now I am a Space Marine collector. I also just got on board with the Drukhari, so I've got a little bit of that going as well, and I'm having a blast. As far as other nerdy things, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons somewhat regularly for the last couple years, and very regularly again since the pandemic. And I don't know. I would consider myself a general nerd. I dig video games and sci-fi and fantasy of all stripes, and I like it when I can paint things.
All sounds good.
Well, coming off of Jane there, Kurt, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, I'm Kurt. I was born and raised in Connecticut. I just finished a master's degree in genre writing, genre fiction, I also can teach English online and in class. I'm currently working on an epic fantasy novel. Actually, I'm working on a second epic fantasy novel and trying to sell the first one. And I run a comic book shop. That's my main two jobs, writing and running a comic shop. And I play around with editing, workshopping, and other writing and fiction-related things.
Well, Kurt, that sounds really cool. I'm going to take a look at your work after this. We'll leave some links in the description and everything. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your hobby history as well?
So the hobby side of things started off really weird for me. I'm a little bit older than the other two here. I started in '89 with gaming. I got into role playing. My uncle came back from the Navy and gave me his D&D stuff and ran me through a D&D game as something to do on a rainy day. And I was hooked on D&D. After that, I kept going to the bookstore and trying to get more role-playing stuff. And I discovered BattleTech and Warhammer in the store. And the thing with me was I had a couple friends who wanted to role-play. We didn't understand that Warhammer was meant to be this big miniatures war game, because back in the original Rogue Trader days of 40K, the characters in the game, you had to you rolled their stat lines. So, like, you rolled their intelligence and leadership and like their spells. So you could basically make a unit of Space Marines that were all different and had different stats. And what we ended up doing is, since we didn't have money, we're kids, we didn't have money for miniatures, we would make up squads of like Inquisitor and his like squad of Marines, bodyguards, and one of us would run a scenario and the other two would run their squads through firefights just using, paper maps and stuff like that. That's how I got into Warhammer and into wargaming, was through basically role-playing the scenarios on paper. And then later on, I got into painting and miniatures, and it was an expensive hobby that I couldn't really keep up with until later on. And now I'm totally addicted to just collecting lots and lots of miniatures and sometimes painting them. But I'm trying to switch that around. With the pandemic, I've been painting a lot more, and I've been role-playing for 32 years now. So those are my main passions: role-playing, storytelling, writing it all up as fiction, and then making up squads and units of Marines, more so than making army lists anymore.
That sounds really cool, man.
Thank you much.
So, Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Mike. I'm a videographer. I have a videography company. We do small videos for small companies. I also like to dabble in some YouTube content creation, podcast creation, all that stuff for fun. And yeah, I'm just looking to exercise, some creative juices, I guess, while trying to get back into, regular life again.
Yeah, keep it juicy. So tell us about your hobby origins.
Well, like Jane said, I started back around the same age he was, but probably a little younger. I had a friend who was Scottish. Well, his parents were from Scotland, and he was born and raised in the United States, but they would go every summer back to the UK, and he would bring back all these like Games Workshop models and stuff like that. And I think it was second edition when I first saw, Warhammer 40K. And I bought an orc. I was just painting it up at my sister's soccer games or whatever, and from there, I started branching out into Space Marines. So when Jane was getting into Lord of the Rings, I had realized that it was a similar type of war game to Warhammer 40K and, the traditional Warhammer at the time. And was very interested in like putting together an army. And I made massive phalanxes of Uruk-hai and with their pikes and everything like that. And it wasn't a very good army because it had no strategy to it other than just like push them towards the Fellowship, who ultimately destroyed me. But it was still fun. And then later on down the line, I finally got, Jane getting up with his Necrons and me finally painting up some of my Blood Angels, and we finally started playing 40K tabletop again. Like Jane, it kind of fell off. My army was stolen, and I bought a new army at a trade show and kind of got back into it, but the rules were just really, and I didn't have anybody to play with, so it wasn't really worth learning the rules. And now, pandemic comes around, I'm home painting and just itching to get out and play a couple games on the tabletop.
I was trying to come up with something silly to say about, like, if you're itching that bad, maybe you should get that checked first. But, it just didn't quite come together soon enough. So
we're leaving that in.
Okay, great.
Okay. All right. So now that we've got all of our personal introductions out of the way, let's move on to one of our weekly segments where we're going to talk about our
fails and wins of the week.
believe I can throw some reverb on that. I don't know, maybe make myself sound like mighty man. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about something we failed at and something we won at this week. So, Kurt, why don't you start us off?
All right, I got a win and a fail. So I am in 2 different D&D games a week. It's pandemic times. We're all online, so gaming is happening actually a lot more now than it was beforehand when we had to actually travel to people's houses. So I have a win and a fail, a win in one game and an utter fail in the other game. And so it's a very interesting week for me. I'll start with the win, because we always start with the good and then we can laugh at the bad. The win of the week was I'm playing a high-level barbarian in my Saturday night game. And I just went on a hot streak with my character. I dropped a 20 for my initiative. I went first. I ran forward. I have 2 attacks. I dropped 2 20s immediately. Bang, bang. Enemy dead instantly. Wow, amazing. I moved on to the next guy for the next round. Dropped a regular hit and another crit. That guy was almost dead. Over the course of the next 4 rounds, I managed to drop a total of 7 crits. Or was it 8? It might have been 8. 8 crits over 4 rounds, and pretty much just went from this side of the battlefield, killed that guy, ran to the other side of the battlefield, killed that guy, ran back to the other players who were getting dogpiled, killed 2 guys. It was epic. Now on the fail side of things, we had a game basically grind to a halt where everyone's just sort of stopped. My Tuesday night game has been running for 21 years now. A regular every Tuesday we have a game. It's multiple stories, multiple campaigns, but we were just finishing a dungeon. We got out, we sat there and we're like, what do we do next? Everyone sort of looked at each other and went like, we have no drive, no ambition. We're just going through the motions. And basically in that moment of just asking what was the next step, everyone at the table, well, we're not at the virtual table, basically said, yeah, this game's pretty much over because we have no drive to be in it anymore. And it was just a really weird sensation where everyone came to an agreement like, yeah, let's move on to the next game that the DM has in his repertoire. And the DM was like, okay, well, we're calling it for the night, and you got 2 games to choose from. We'll figure it out next week. And maybe in the next post or a couple, I will give you a win of the week on how that went. We'll find out. So who else has a good story of win and fail?
Okay, Jane, yeah, why don't you kick off your win and fail?
All right, great. So my win for this week, I have been assembling the Drukhari half of the Piety and Pain box and just really enjoying all of those pointy sculpts. And I was looking up advice on the best way to assemble the scourges, which are basically these winged beasties with big old guns. One of the frustrating things about that kit is that it basically only comes with 1 of each special weapon, even though there's no restriction on that. In the game, you could have 4 of the same special weapon. And a lot of the guides I was looking at were saying, okay, so really one of the best ways to kit these guys out is for 4 blasters. And like I said, they only came with 1 blaster in the kit, so I had to figure out how to kind of jury-rig 3 other blasters. And I am just really proud of my conversion work there. For one, I did a barrel swap with a similar-looking pistol and one of the other basic carbines that they have. For another one, or the other 2, actually, I was able to trim and modify 2 of the other weapons so that they look similar enough to pass muster on the tabletop. And that's some work that I haven't really done before, so it was really satisfying to both, just think through those puzzles and be very happy with the results. So I'm thrilled with that and really excited to get it painted up, and that's my win there. For my fail, I'm going to pivot over to Dungeons & Dragons as well. So we also have a regular Tuesday night game. That's Mike and I play with some other friends of mine. And I started out this week on a hot streak in a completely inconsequential combat encounter, I was rolling like fire. Not quite as good as Kurt's, 7 or 8 critical hits, but I don't think I rolled lower than a 16. And with my various attack bonuses with my warlock, I've got like a +9 or something. So all of my totals were essentially over 20. I was just killing it. And then afterwards, I just wasted all my good rolls for the night. Luckily, that kind of works for this character because he's a dummy. So, I fell down a trapdoor. I got turned into a slug and promptly died. It was a silly evening.
Well, he died because he turned into a slug and landed on rock salt.
That is correct. Our DM is sadistic that way.
The rock salt?
But anyway, I mean, yeah, you get turned into a slug and you land on some rock salt, and then all the moisture gets sucked right out of your body.
I get the why. I'm just like, that's just mean.
Oh, so mean. So mean. But anyway, I'm going to call that a fail just because it was, just a whole bunch of absurdly good rolls in a place that didn't need them, and a bunch of bad rolls in a place where I could have used the good ones. But I also am a strong believer that, however your dice roll, you can turn it in service of the story. So, now I've got this great experience that my warlock had that I can use in my next couple of games. So that's my wins and fails.
I think you still had a good time, though, at least.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It was hilarious.
Well, on that note, Mike, wins and fails.
Okay, so my win of this past week was finally getting my first 4 Sanguinary Guard, nice and painted. They look super mint. I'm very proud of that. And I also got Mephiston finished, and he also looks really good. So I'm moving on to some other stuff right now. I think I'm going to be working on Incursors next. But I'm super proud of those 2 models, and I can't wait to get them on the battlefield, even if Mephiston is underperforming right now. Anyways, my fail is a little more tragic. Actually, it's super tragic. I hadn't quite built a box to house my second army, which is Necrons, in. I have them magnetized and they're all sitting on baking sheets, and I have a box that is ready to be made into their storage case, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So yesterday I said to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get it done today. So I brought it downstairs, and I got distracted by my half-finished heavy intercessors. And I wanted to finish putting those together before I, had to clear off space on the desk to make this new box. And stupidly, I had left this box behind me. And when I dropped a bit from one of the heavy intercessors and pushed myself back to, look down and see where it was, it all fell. And it just, sprawled across the floor. And was lucky enough that nothing except for one thing got broken. A couple magnets fell off the bottoms of some units, oh well, I just super glued those back on. However, a little while back, earlier on during the pandemic, I had ordered a Nightbringer off of eBay and was ripped off by a very poorly printed reproduction sculpt. And I tried my best to salvage it, but it was very brittle. I got it on a custom base, primed. It looked great. I fixed some of the stuff that was, falling apart with it, with green stuff to make some extra robes and flowy bits, because those had all broken off in transit from England from this guy who ripped me off. And it shattered. It just shattered, and it's not able to be put back together. The other crap thing is that eBay never finalized the return. He did a classic thing of leaving the return thing in limbo because he didn't actually expect me to send it back. He never said he needed it to be sent back, but he had set it up that it would need to be returned for me to get the refund. And I was not about to go through a whole bunch of stuff to send a miniature that has shattered back to England. I mean, like, it literally was garbage at that point. I was really lucky to have salvaged it. So it's just kind of, yeah, be careful what you buy on eBay. Just be careful. So I guess that's a multi-fail. Yeah, that's a multi-fail. Multi-pass, multi-fail.
One brief aside, this is not like to be edited out. I almost feel like you gave us the whole knocked over trays in our actual podcast 2, not 1.
I did.
I can't remember.
I did. It happened twice.
Oh, this is the second time?
This is the second time.
Oh, then maybe... okay. Okay, never mind.
This is the second time with the same fucking army. However, this time the damage was permanent. You know,
oh, that sucks.
It's kind of weird because we're re-recording this segment, so, like, you know, some of the stuff I talked about is going to come up later, so I was trying to say it like it's future. But at the same time, like, yes, it is the same story, except this time. I mean, except it happened at a different time.
A different time and in a different area, because I think it was in your living room before.
Yes, it was. You have a good memory, sir.
I do. I didn't want to interrupt you while you were telling the story, but I'm like, damn, he's going to have to erase this whole story and give us another one, because you already told it. But okay.
Oh, no. And we can leave this in. Like, I don't mind leaving this in.
That's fine. I couldn't remember my fail from the first time we recorded this. So, like, I just had to come up with, like, a fail that happened really recently versus the win that happened several weeks ago when we first recorded this. I think I just complained about how my DM kept locking me down. And, like, basically, as much as I'm an awesome barbarian who crits everything, he'll then put me in a maze, which he did this most recent game, or banish me that I basically sit out half the game and my character is like trapped in an alternate dimension waiting to be sprung.
So he puts you in a timeout, basically.
I mean, it's like a literal out-of-game timeout where I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
Okay, Kurt Zog the Barbarian, you must go sit in the corner.
It was worse than that, but yeah.
Okay, so on to our next segment, where we're going to be talking about our product endorsements, not sponsored. These are products that we like to use and love. They could be brand name, could be generic. It doesn't matter. We're supporting them here, even though they don't support us. Kurt, do you want to tell us about your product?
Obviously, with all of our hobbying, you know, we have to glue stuff together. I mean, we could go on and on about glue. Maybe we'll do that in a future segment. But I'm actually going to talk about Glue Catalyst today. Basically, the insta-cure for CA glue is a must if you're just trying to get stuff to stick together and not go insane. Especially if your glue is getting older, sometimes it takes longer to set up. The thing about the Instaset, and this is what we're going to talk about today, is that it comes in a spray bottle. So, you know, you squeeze and it puts out a big mist, which covers your whole work surface. And I recently saw a hack where you unscrew the mister and you pull out the tube and you just touch the tube to a miniature and like one drop of accelerant will go into your miniature and set the glue instantly. That was great, but it was still a big drop of glue, or a big drop of accelerator, so your whole mini would be covered in this accelerant. And then I found these little bottles. Now, I don't have a name for these bottles. I don't have a brand name or anything, but you can find them on Amazon. And I will provide Mike with a link to them so that he could put it in show notes or wherever the heck we have links. And these little bottles have this steel tip that is like barely a millimeter. It's almost like a hair coming out of the tip of the bottle. And you can fill the bottle with anything you want. The bottles are awesome. But I put Instaset in them. And you can get a tiny, tiny, tiny little drop of Instacure, like right between two joints of whatever you're putting together. I mean, sometimes it's easier to just put a drop on one part and then put the glue on the other part and just stick them together. You could do that too. That's even more practical. But the fact of the matter is, instead of spraying your whole desk with a big spritz of activator, I'm just using a tiny, tiny little drop. And this one bottle of Instaset has probably lasted me 2.5 years now. I still got plenty left. Tiny little bottles, needle tip, applicator, very, very useful. And you can use them for other stuff too. Unfortunately, you have to buy them in packs of 10 and 20, so you'll find other uses for it, believe me.
Kurt actually provided me with some of these bottles, and I have been using them for this purpose, and they are really good for this. I find it especially useful in basing, if I just want to get the mini on there and just plop it down with one hand, and then the other hand, just a little drop, or even just touching the tip of the needle to the base near the feet, and it just runs into there and just dries them instantly. No worrying about them slipping around, whatever. I do want to clarify, though, you can put almost anything in these bottles. Yes, you cannot or should not put glue in these bottles. CA glue or plastic cement. Inside the bottles that super glue / CA glue or plastic cement come in are like they have like a chemical liner, or the bottle itself is made of a material that can handle it. Like, I don't want people to go out there and go, oh, cool, I can put the accelerant and the super glue in these bottles. And then like the next morning, that entire super glue bottle is hard and done. Like, that's what will happen. I'm just letting everybody know. It's just a clarifier to that. That's all. And it's not like it's a big problem. It's just don't do it. That's all it is. Because you can do so much more with those bottles. There's a lot of things. Like, yeah, like you said, you put the accelerant in it. You could probably even put like little dip washes in it to like, target some areas. It's very handy. Did you want to add anything?
Oh, it's just I actually think it is the proper plastic that you could actually put liquid cement in them, but I have to go physically check again because it's like H something. It's like HVC or HVP or something plastic. HIPAA plastic doesn't react to liquid cement, so I actually think you can fill these with liquid cement, but I'd have to go physically check.
So that depends also because, we're talking about needle point plastic bottles. The actual substance that these plastic bottles are made of can vary. Like the ones you provided me were more cloudy. The ones that I got from another place were like this clear plastic. So that part of it will differ. And that's why I'm just saying be careful. Know what you're putting in to your stuff. I don't really think there's much of a need to transfer liquid cement, considering the bottle. If you have GW liquid cement, it comes with a very similar steel tip applicator. Yeah, so
don't put glue in them, kids. Don't put glue
don't put glue in them.
No, glue is for your models and your nose, not for the bottles.
Yeah, not for the bottles. I have a friend who uses them for oil. He puts machine oil in them because he does train work and he repairs wind watches. And he puts machine oil in these bottles and just one drop, done.
That's actually a really good idea for like airbrush oil.
Yeah, various lubricants.
Jane, do you want to tell us about your product endorsement this week?
Yeah, so my first set of clippers that I got, which I think they came in one of the, the GW like paint and hobby sets, which I bought along with my Soul Strike box. So those clippers recently broke in a way that I just could not jury rig the little like kind of spring that keeps them popping open, just exploded. So I had to get me some new clippers. And I went to my friendly local gaming store. I go to the Complete Strategist, which is on 33rd Street in Manhattan, if any New York listeners are in the area. Love those guys. Anyway, I just picked up the clippers that they had were the Army Painter brand clippers, and they're just awesome. It's kind of silly to, point out a tool like this, but really I think having good clippers is super important to get your minis off your sprues in one piece. These have a really nice grip, and their spring mechanism is it's made in a way that doesn't seem easily breakable to me. So hopefully I will be able to have these for a long time. They're just awesome, and not too expensive. I think I paid somewhere between $10-15 for these. They're great. So yeah, Army Painter clippers. That's my endorsement.
And that's a good thing to hear because I think my clippers are on the way out. Last night I noticed they're just not cutting as well as they used to. I think they're just not sharp enough. So that's a good thing to keep on my mind. I'll go into my product endorsement now. which is poster tack / blue tack / museum putty. And you can get it from various brands. I would not suggest like the super generic brands. They just don't adhere as well. But you can use them for so many things. You can use them to hold your models together while you zenithal prime them and then take them apart so that you can, do sub-assembly if you're into that kind of thing. You can use it to like hold minis onto bases temporarily. You can use it to mask areas that you're trying to paint. You can even use it to stick things to walls. So,
Oh,
so I think like it's a great like all around useful product. And I think Kurt, you told me you have like a specific like museum putty brand in mind.
yeah, I switched from I tried blue tack, but I got this like dried out lump of blue tack, and I found it was like garbage. And I'm like, why is everyone telling me blue tack is amazing? But then I bought museum putty when I found out that museum putty was specifically. I actually just threw out the freaking container this morning. So I don't have the name in front of me. I could probably get it. Museum putty is like super, super, super sticky, and I prime using an airbrush, and I museum putty my stuff to like corks or sticks or whatever I got handy, really. Sometimes old paint pots, and paint does like it just sort of like cracks the paint off too. So I've never lost stick. It's held everything together, and I love this stuff. It's amazing. Though it does have a hard stick. Like sometimes when I have a mini glued to a base, and the base is stuck to the putty on my cork, if I pull the mini from the miniature and not from the base, I've actually broken the glue holding the miniature to the base rather than the base to the museum putty. So then I've had to pull the base off and then re-glue the miniature back to the base. So it's strong stuff, but I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about this sometimes. Silly putty used for like masking things. I've used poster tack to mask things. The cheaper poster tack because it doesn't stick as well. But if you're doing like things where you really want them to like hold your minis together, I'm definitely gonna buy some of this museum putty that you're talking about now, because like I have a bunch of regular poster tack and it's good for what it does, but I can definitely see the usefulness of that stickier substance.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, like I have no like. Sometimes if you're spraying, with your primer or with your airbrush, I've sometimes worried about like turning the miniature upside down to spray, from the feet up to the head, like because I'll be like, oh, the tack will drop the mini. With this museum putty, I have no fear of basically just swinging the miniature all over the place or putting it in any direction while I paint it. Like I said, I usually have to find like a screwdriver or my X-Acto knife to pry it off the putty at the end. So I'm loving it. I think it's perfect.
With the poster tack, my temporary, like I have a couple of models that are quote fully assembled unquote, but there are certain parts that are being held on for poster tack because at the time when I was putting them together, I thought that I was going to do sub-assemblies on them. In a future episode, you'll learn that I hate sub-assemblies, so that's not a thing much anymore. But there are like it's like don't touch them, because as soon as you touch them they start to fall apart now, because like the poster tack just isn't sufficient for like long-term holding things together. So knowing that museum putty's out there is definitely something I will look into for myself.
Yeah, when I found it, I don't know if it was another podcast or somewhere else, but someone mentioned it to me. And when I looked it up, I guess museum putty was a precursor to blue tack. Museums were using it to hold together broken vases, and when they put like a vase or jewelry or something on a pedestal, they use poster tack. So like if there's an earthquake or a tremor, like stuff won't fall and break. So they used to hold museum quality stuff on the walls and pedestals. And I think that was the name of the brand. I think it was something Quake or Quake. The brand. I found it right on Amazon again. you put museum putty in, it's like the very first thing you find. It's like a beigey tan stuff. And blue tack is basically just the cheaper generic version trying to beat museum putty.
Yeah, they do it more for like, like they call it poster tack because it's so that you can put posters on your wall without causing damage to the paint. So it's like a very mild adhesive. One of the more useful things I actually used the poster tack for was I drop things a lot. I have shaky hands. It just happens. And I must have knocked it off or dropped it somehow, but that little pot that you use to clean your airbrush, I dropped the top of it and it shattered in one spot. Now you can't use that thing if it's not sealed because it's literally like it's keeping in that spray and the fumes and whatnot, and it has a filter and everything. Before I got my green stuff to make a more permanent fix for like a month or two, I had poster tack just sealing that whole thing off in that area, and it screwed back on correctly again after I'd put that together like that, because the threads were lined up again properly. It was, it's really useful for like just random things that you don't even realize. And the other thing that I really use it for is I hang my brushes upside down from my light stand on my desk to dry so that they can, nothing gets caught in the ferrule. And I think that it's been definitely a good thing. I know after the first time I mentioned it, I know Jane went out and started doing it, and I was really happy to see that he had a picture of it. I can't think of drying brushes in a better way than that. It's safe. It definitely holds them, and I have a lot of long-lasting brushes that should have probably died on me by now.
Yeah, I'm grateful that you shared that tip. I've been doing that for the last couple weeks now, and I think it's been good for my brushies.
All right, so that's it for the episode this week. We'll be back next week. I do want to clarify a few things before we move on. A lot of times in this episode and in future episodes, you will hear us talk about hobbying separate from like other tabletop and other gaming things. We realize that all of these things are technically hobbying. When we're referring to hobbying, it's more of like the painting, building of miniatures versus the actual like playing of a game. Just moving forward, knowing that probably give you a little clarity into how we talk about this kind of stuff. And my name is Mike.
And I'm Kurt.
And I'm Jane.
And we're What Am Games, hobby podcasts for hobbyists who are interested in listening, and for others too. So, we'll have a good time, and we'll see you all next time.